Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card. So today's pick a card is looking at where are you in terms of your spirituality, your spiritual gifts, your spiritual path, 1 in a million or even 1 in a billion or some other sort of like exponential number of that kind of magnitude. So we're looking at what makes you really unique. Now, this is actually the structure or the beginning structure of this is similar to a reading that I've done before, probably a year or two ago, probably closer to 2 years ago. I saw an interview, someone was interviewing Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about Elon Musk, and he was talking about how certain qualities of Elon Musk that he has at a very high order. And if I remember correctly, it was probably like very fast thought, very innovative thought. When multiplied by other aspects that he had, which is this sort of indefatigable, incredible sort of concentration, see things through, energy and so forth. When if you were 1 in a million in each of those, if they were exponentially multiplied, it becomes 1 in a billion. If you were 1 in 100,000 or so, with another 1 in 100,000, it becomes 1 in a million. So I found it a really interesting idea because I think we all probably have that in various sort of levels, and it plays out in various sort of ways in our lives. So I looked at that just in general in life. So where was one that kind of particular genius or like kind of special source in a way, using astrology as a way to, with planetary energies, to describe what that looked like and then seeing how it played out. So I was recently reminded of it because I actually used part of that sort of concept in a private reading because of the nature of a question that was asked. And then I thought, it would be really interesting to do a version of this on spirituality. And so looking at this particularly around your spiritual gifts, your spiritual path and so forth, not your whole life, but that kind of thing. So this reading will look at that. We'll focus a lot on what your spiritual gifts are, how they manifest and so forth, but also how it connects to the real world, to the natural world, all of that kind of thing as well, and what the balance is. So if you think of planetary pairings, two planetary pairings being a bit like the two aspects, the two pillars of what in Jordan Peterson's sort of description made Elon Musk, then I think there's a kind of a joining energy. What is the multiplier? What is the thing that is the multiplier effect that brings those together and makes that happen? And that's what this card, which is your choice card for pile, represents. And then there are two other cards with other planetary pairings underneath it. I don't know what they are at the moment, and they will actually be the description of the aspects that, when multiplied together, makes you 1 in a million, or, as I say, 1 in a billion even, in terms of spirituality. So that's the concept. I hope it intrigues you. If you didn't see the other one, it was a really interesting concept, and it was done broader than just spirituality. So check out my playlist. It'll be there somewhere, probably about 2 years ago. And that'll give you, I think I talked a little bit more about the interview because at that time it's fresher in my mind if you want to get a bit more of an idea of the concept. But you don't have to do that. It's just there if you haven't seen it already. And if you had seen it, then hopefully you're intrigued by that and therefore intrigued by this. So all we really need to do beyond that is look at the pile choice. You can, of course, go to more than one reading. It may well be that you have a couple of aspects of your spirituality and two aspects kind of multiply together to become this very unique thing. And in other circumstances, like it might be in your kind of interpersonal relationships, it comes out in one way, and then in your career and like working with the material world, it comes out in a different way. So that's up to you if you feel drawn to more than one. But otherwise, it's perfectly fine just to go to one as well. So as I say, this is the kind of energy that is almost like a balancing point. It's both where it could keep it in balance between the two and get the best outcome. It's also where it could challenge it, or where it could make this sort of like alchemy of energy get triggered in a way that you have to be careful of and manage. So we will be looking at what that kind of means as a multiplier effect. So go with whatever draws you. If you know astrology well, you'll know what the planets tend to mean. Otherwise, go with the imagery, or if you always choose pile 2, it's fine. But for pile number 1, we have Mercury and Mercury together. For pile number 2, we have Saturn and Saturn together. And just to prove that I just shuffled and asked Spirit that it was going to be doubles up of particular planets. For pile number 3, we have Jupiter and Neptune, so 2 different planets. So go with whatever reading or readings draw you, and the timestamps are in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome, pile one, to your reading. So, as I said in the introduction, the centre card, which is the pole choice card, is a multiplying effect, a balancing effect, and also maybe a triggering effect to bring out the two pillars here around your particular spiritual individuality, what makes you one in a million or even higher than that. So let's have a look at these two first, and then I'll have a talk about this. The first pillar here, it certainly says to me that your life path, because you have the sun here, has something to do with spiritual energy, because we're talking about spirituality and the sun's turned up. So it is part of your life path. It also suggests the thing about your sun, the sun in your chart, people sort of think, oh, my sun is in Leo, so I'm a Leo. But the reality is we grow into our sun. It is our life path. So this suggests to me that your connection of your spirituality to your life path and to knowing that that's really an intrinsic part of you grows over time. Having said that, it grows pretty quickly because Uranus is a very high frequency download, change agent. It's a disrupting energy. And when you've got two Mercuries there, which I'll get to, everything happens very quickly with you. So one of the things about you, I think I sort of said in the beginning, I think one of the things Jordan Peterson said about Elon Musk was very fast thought, very innovative. You have something of that nature here, and it is part of your life path. Your spiritual life path is about change, evolution, revolution. So you shake things up and you do get a lot of downloads. So I suspect we are going to look with tarot at the nature of your gifts in terms of, the different minor arcana, what that tells me about how they might manifest. And then we'll also look at them in a different way as well, a little bit later in the reading. I think that this should show something in relation to sort of air elements, sort of like the downloads, the mind downloads or whatever. But it will depend. For some of you, it may be the download comes through very kinesthetically and you feel it in your body or something like that. But it is a disruptive force, but it has a purpose. So there is something of the spiritual revolutionary about you, of bringing different ideas, new ideas, very much future focused, but with a sense of this is about development, this is where we're going. So I think that there's a very strong navigating force around what is appropriate development, but you are more than able to shake things up. So you would be the sort of person, if you were a reader like I am, for instance, you wouldn't be afraid to say the more difficult things. You would say this needs to change. This is stale. This is outdated. This has to move on. You will do that. You will push buttons, but you do it for yourself as well too. There's nothing that you would say spiritually to try and sort of inspire people and get them out of a rut or something that you wouldn't be happy enough to hear for yourself. You are open to that, and you are spiritually very comfortable with the concept of evolution and change. So that's part of you. You're not looking for a safe and secure spiritual belief that makes you feel loved and protected by the divine and that there's not much to do apart from follow a few rules. You're not that sort of person. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that for you, that's not what you are. You want to push the envelope. You want to have direct experience with divine intellect and so forth, that kind of thing. And to see the divine's purpose, it's like you reflect on some level. If the divine created all of this to know itself, you now see one of your spiritual purposes is to know yourself, and the only way you do it is through challenging the sort of systems, the information you get or whatever, and being very open to that. So that's one side of it. The other side, which is good here, is that you do have a very caring heart. And you do want, with Venus there, you do want love to be at the core of it. So if you are going to be challenging, it's not going to be too much. You actually can, with your Mercury, with your communication energy, find the way to present the information in a way that can be palatable to others. For some of you, this is very artistic. For some of you, this incredible inspiration is going to actually come out in something artistic with Mercury and Venus together, sort of whether it's, and that could run from beautiful singing voice, it could run to writing amazing novels, it could be painting, it could be anything, but there is a communication of the core feeling energy that you can do, and you have an incredible way of doing that. When you look at Mercury being the balancing energy of that, the instigating, new ideas, fast thinking, communication, you live to communicate. You absolutely live to communicate. And your spirituality is connected to communication. You're very much of the mind, I have to say. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I actually think the mind is incredibly important in spirituality. It's the thing that will agitate. It will see what is not logical. It will see what is not consistent. And you are looking for something that is consistent, communicating something that has beauty. Beauty is often described as symmetry. So I think that there is a lot of what you do that takes the changes that are necessary to make things more beautiful and to make communication more palatable. So as I say, you wouldn't have a problem with saying to somebody in a reading, wow, you need to do something about procrastination, for instance, just as an example. But you would find a way to say it that showed them that there was something really beautiful in doing that, like that it maybe came from a lack of self-esteem, and here's all the reasons to have the self-esteem. So there's something in that space. For some of you, spiritually, you have a sense of change, and you're going to manifest this like politically or socially or something like that. You are able to get up and speak. You would be highly charismatic. You're probably, as I say, very attractive, like I would say, very good looking, or as I say, incredibly beautiful speaking voice or something like that. And this is part of your spiritual gifts, because your spiritual gifts are all triggered by the need to communicate quickly, communicate a lot of information, and bring the change and the energy that's necessary. So you are very mercurial. You're very much like Hermes. If you were looking for a deity archetype or whatever to say who you are, when we've got Mercury turning up 3 times out of a possible 6 planets, that pretty much says you are very much in that space. But as I say, your life path is about change, and there's something about beauty and balancing it. So you are the type of social, political, spiritual revolutionary, and this is your spiritual power that is doing this, that actually manages to bring change in a way that is beautiful, acceptable, and people would follow. At its absolute worst, you could probably be a cult leader, to be honest. I would recommend against that. I don't think that's very good for one's karma, but you certainly know how to communicate things. Now, the issue with a double Mercury, the one thing that you probably need to watch out for is being too fast for everybody else around you. This is where it's probably good with Venus being there, because you have that kind of beauty and symmetry and so forth, and that kind of almost kind energy or loving energy to bring people along. You may sometimes get frustrated with what seems obvious to you, spiritually or otherwise, is not obvious and quickly picked up by other people. So you probably talk fairly quickly, you think fairly quickly. So you need to be aware of that. And I think sometimes this needs to moderate spiritually, where you need to say, what is the true path, particularly the one that brings you to the beauty and the balance and the symmetry, rather than change for just change's sake, because you might deal with quite a lot of impatience. Spiritually, you might feel, I just want to say some things that really stir everything up because I'm feeling like people aren't getting me. That is the sort of balance. Now, I do think with the Venus there, you're probably as a person, in the terms of these two things multiplying, that energy is kind of balanced off with that. So for the most part, you're probably fine. But I think you do need to be a bit careful sometimes of being a bit spiritually ahead of other people and then getting frustrated with them. So it's just feeling people are going too slow or not getting it. I do like the fact that you have that, but it's nevertheless there. It's something to be aware of when that triggers in the wrong way. So, okay, so let's have a look. What we're going to do with tarot is we're going to have a look a bit more about this, and then a bit more about how it all kind of gets triggered and comes together. Now, there's a particular way I'm going to be looking at this. I will look at it traditionally, like what's the tarot saying traditionally, but I'm going to look at it also, as I say, particularly for these two, maybe not so much for the joining one, because that's just a joining energy. But when we're looking at these as spiritual gifts, your spiritual energy and what makes you spiritually unique, when I have minor arcana cards and court cards of a particular sign, that's going to be telling me something about the type of ways your spirituality manifests for you, and also to what degree it's developed. When we see major arcana, that will tell us something about situations externally that either trigger it or where you can really make the most of these spiritual gifts if you sort of like back yourself on them. So firstly, let's have a look at Sun and Uranus. So this is your life path being about change and your spiritual life path being about change, evolution, revolution. Seven of Cups reversed. Oh, and when I think when I have sort of the suits reversed, I think it's an aspect you have that's maybe not fully manifested. Queen of Cups reversed, the Empress reversed. Well, okay, you've got to really trigger the Venus thing a little bit more, pile one. Knight of Pentacles reversed. Don't worry that cards are all reversed. It doesn't mean all that, all reversed. Five of Swords. Eight of Swords reversed. Okay. That's interesting, actually, with this energy. So what this is telling me, there are external things that trigger this, though I would say for most of you, you haven't fully stepped into what you could create and who you could be in the world. So the Empress energy is about abundance, all those sort of things. But the fact that it's reversed suggests that either there's something about the environment that you're doing your spirituality in, the way that you're pursuing it, looking at it, getting inspiration, or even just the material world that you're in, that isn't really manifesting the divine feminine energy and the Venus energy as much as it could. But external circumstances are probably going to trigger that for you. And it's going to make the connection of these because, of course, over here with Sun and Uranus, it's not the Venus aspect there. So it's really asking you when you're looking at that to think about the Venus side of things more. But external things around how you can make things abundant or not, how you can make things grow or not, will trigger that. Now, it's interesting because I feel that's part of what I was picking up around the impatience. I think that you may be particularly in this energy actually at the moment, and this is almost, it's not latent, but it's there. It may be almost a bit overwhelmed by just the wish to communicate. So this may be what's going on. It may be that for you spiritually, you could bring this all into harmony, but you have to kind of slow down just a bit to let people catch up. Because with the Cups energy here, you're realistic emotionally, but maybe you seem almost a little bit detached emotionally, like it's not connecting to there. People aren't seeing in the energy of what you're doing the sort of emotional connection you have. You are actually well advanced with it. Like with the Empress reverse and the Queen of Cups, it's not that you haven't really got this. It's just that it's not really being activated yet. It's almost as though the Mercury is taking over and it's like what makes sense, what's logical, what is sort of like it fits with the way I would articulate this rather than the heart of it. That's why this side, which you do have, but it's a little bit latent, and we'll see a little bit more about it in the next row, but that is not, if you access that more, you'll get further. You do have a sense of where you could slow down, and you do need to slow down, like quite a bit, to be honest, for people to be able to really see how this could manifest. Your body could tell you. You don't listen to your body a lot. I think as a group, you probably, I don't know whether you sort of burn the midnight oil and you don't get a lot of rest, and it's kind of all very much around thinking and like that kind of energy. It's like hyped up on thought and it feels like on, taking sort of like energy drinks and things like that. It feels like the body is almost a bit detached from this. So it's important for you, again, with all this, you get impatient. You really don't want to hang around, and you don't want things just because they've always been there. But your body is actually a good barometer for this, because what it will help you do with the Five of Swords here and the Eight of Swords reversed, firstly is slow down. This is saying this is really important. You go so fast. You need to slow down and get back into your body. That will help you clear out what is not worth looking at. Because one of your issues, to be honest, there's so much spiritual energy coming, so many downloads coming in, and you feel like change and stirring things up is so much part of who you are, that you've got almost too many irons in the fire. Like it's like how you can, part of what you need to do right now to really, really maximize the 1 in a million by really getting into this is getting past the point of just evolution for evolution's sake, change for change's sake, inspiration for inspiration's sake. It's like, and something about getting into your body will help you do that. but you do need to slow down a bit, pile one. So what about the second one? So if you do that and you access this a bit more, and then we have Mercury and Venus, which is still got quite a bit of speed, but it's more balanced. It's a way that people can really like it. They can connect with it, all of that kind of thing. I mean, it'd be kind of like, as I say, if you think about the Elon Musk thing, if he just continually thought of new ideas and didn't have that kind of grounding and energy into just getting things through and finding the people to get things through, which is kind of what Jordan Peterson was talking about, he wouldn't be where he was. So this is what this is about, is using your spirituality to get the outcome you're trying to get. So the Mercury and Venus side of your spiritual uniqueness. Two of Pentacles reversed, Four of Cups, Five of Cups reversed, the Devil reversed, the World. Okay, yeah, this is where the rubber's going to hit the road. The Sun reversed. Okay, kind of like it's doubling back for you. So what this is saying is, I think right now for most of you, you get lots of downloads. You think incredibly quickly. Spiritually, you're like lightning. And you do have a really good idea, but it's like you have so many. And you're ahead of your time. So you've got to find a way to be able to communicate. This is what you do actually have this ability spiritually, because underneath you have a really good way of communicating, really sort of like very artistic, creative, appealing. That's what you've got to start to use to do this, because it's saying at the moment, again, like it's the kind of bodily side of things. If I were you, I would be thinking now about what sort of spiritual gifts are connected with bodily information, bodily divination. So, you know, things like what do you get if you do kinesiology, like kitchen magic. I don't know, anything that feels like very material. It's like there's options. It helps you get to options. At the moment, you're not really looking at that. You're not even considering that option. It's very much in your head. You've got to get into your body. You have got some of the emotional stuff, but it's more at the moment focused on the problem you're trying to solve here rather than the thing that you're trying to create. So if you switch the narrative a bit and make it less about critique of the situation and like, you know, blowing everything up, metaphorically speaking, and taking it to sort of something that's actually building something that people want. You move out of an emotional thing where the Venus is almost always focused on what isn't working, and you free that energy. You can actually complete, you can bring this together and you can link it back to the sun, because what you're meant to do, pile one, is to take all these inspirations, sort out which ones are the key ones, and then communicate that in such a way that people can join you. And when you do that, that's when you really get your life path. So you're not, at the moment, you're more the agitator and less of the creator, and you're meant to be both. You know, the Empress is meant to turn around. So Mercury can help, or it can be a problem. And Mercury could be a problem with this because of the speed of it, and it's all about ideas. But equally, you are a very, very good communicator. So using that Mercury energy to its best could help you get that loop. It's kind of like you've got to connect the loop because it's there, but this one is a little bit dormant at the moment. So let's just get 4 cards for how Mercury can help you, or anything else you need to know that could be a risk with that as a connecting energy. 2 of Cups. Yeah, that's bringing people towards you. Ace of Cups, bringing the heart out. Yeah, Mercury, because it's connected to Venus here, that's the way to do it. Ace of Swords reverse, slows down some of the downloads a little bit. Knight of Swords, but not so much that you can't move forward and do things. It's actually, interestingly enough, when I would look at Mercury together, I'd normally think that almost exacerbates a problem of speed. But this is actually saying that for you, because your Mercury energy is actually more connected to your heart energy with Venus, whereas your life path is all this sort of Uranian change, that using that Mercury connection, thinking about how to communicate it, that brings people to you. I do think you either have a beautiful speaking voice or singing voice or something like that, or you really do have a wonderful turn of phrase. Once you actually think about how to use that, that's the key. And it automatically, by doing it, slows down the inspiration to make it something that people can connect with. And then once that happens, you can move forward fast then, and then you use the speed of a double Mercury. So this is all about you have this capacity to have downloads spiritually about changes that are necessary. You really do have the ability to communicate it, but right now you're not connecting it to your heart. Once you connect it to your heart, which is part of your uniqueness, once you really activate that, you're going to moderate the timing in a way that brings other people along with you. It's very, very interesting. So let's get a couple of spiritual gifts for each of these. So we've already seen that, like, probably, as I say, the air energy is very powerful for you. You're not as much in your body as you could be, but the way maybe to get to that is through the heart, like what matters to you and how would you communicate that. What we didn't see, though, which is interesting, we didn't see wands. So I feel like there is a creative instinct here, but it may be a bit latent. You may be very creative and you're not doing it. Or this group, it may not be creative in that sort of sense that we think of artistically. It just may be a beautiful way of presenting information. But let's just see what we get. So we're just going to get a couple of divination type of areas that this part of you works with and a couple that this part can work with, because I think it's there, but you're not fully accessing it. So for the Sun, Uranus, Wheel of Fortune, so fate, bringing in fate, and it is fate. It's connected to, if you think of like character is destiny, our life path is our destiny in some ways. It's also understanding timing. I always think the Wheel of Fortune in the tarot is about timing and understanding timing. So that Uranian energy, and it might be why you get frustrated sometimes. That's why it's important to know how to package what you're seeing. But you have this sense of fate, you have this sense of destiny, and you're not wrong about it. And fire, okay, so there, you do have the fire. The fire energy, we're not seeing wands there, it's right there in the Uranian energy. So that is a creative thing. This is why I felt like there was creativity. But how that manifests could be a number of things. But you have that sense of being able to act at the right moment. That's one of the things that you're very, very good at. You know when change is coming. You know you'd be able to connect to the zeitgeist. You could probably read the stock market really well, all of those sort of things. Then what about Mercury and Venus? So for Mercury, augur, mastery. Okay, this is where, in fact, you could seem to be the one who does the divination and sees the future. You actually are doing it, but to let people see you as that way and to master what you get, this is like working out the way to communicate it. So you are divinatory. It is saying that, actually. And the change is actually kind of seeing the future, but it's how you communicate it that makes you be seen as a master when it comes to that side of things. And ornithomancy, I mean, okay, so this is like the reading of patterns, I think, with the birds, if I remember correctly. I'm not really that across ornithomancy, but I think that's what it is, like seeing the migration of birds, again, the timing of birds, something about the beauty and the symmetry of that. It's interesting I said synastry. It might be part of this is about you finding the people to align with, because synastry in astrology is how two charts mixed together. So there might be something about that, which is also the heart and the minds, getting the heart and minds of people in the patterns, seeing the patterns, being able to show the patterns. That is how you read what is going on. So there's something very kind of prophetic about you, but it's like this is the challenge at the moment, to get the sort of like the flow, and for people to see what you're seeing, for them to understand what you're seeing. You might be so complex. It's actually some people I read for who have very, 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 have a lot of this kind of energy, really brilliant. And I think one of the struggles is to kind of describe what they're experiencing. So you may, if you're in that group, you may well have actually come to this, and this will be showing part of how to do it, getting into the heart rather than the mind, because there's a very strong mind energy here, and it's got to be connected to the heart. Okay, so let's just look at just some areas in your kind of day-to-day world at the moment with what's coming up, that where you could really access and use this sort of like combined energy that makes you one in a million spiritually. So these could be challenges, or they could be blessings that you can leverage. So we have creative inspiration. Yeah, well, yeah. You have creative inspiration coming out of the wazoo, basically. You really do. So, but as I say, you do need to work out which ones are the ones that you really want to take forward. Like some of it is about just working out what's a good idea and what isn't. Consequences of bad choice. Yeah, like maybe starting to think about when have you sort of like gone down rabbit warrens. You could be looking at a creative way of fixing a problem as well, if there's been a problem, because you are a bit of a problem solver with Uranian energy. Uranus wants to change things for the better. Now, sometimes it just wants to change things, so you just have to be aware of that. We have emotional overwhelm. Okay, you may actually block off this because you may find the emotional side of this information too much. But I think that this might be saying that like this is actually answering a question about what to do when some of the emotional energy comes in, because you're blocking it at the moment, and yet it's part of what makes you this sort of one in a million. Move it into the creative space. It allows you to almost like beta test things to know what would be good choices and what would be bad choices, rather than just shutting things down because they feel emotional. And not as expected. Okay. So sometimes things that have happened won't happen as you expect. Like you do have a sense of like time coming up, but maybe you expected people to understand and they didn't. And so what happened with that? Sometimes maybe you thought it was going to have an outcome that would be good for how you felt emotionally, but it overtook you. I think this is really asking you to use your creative fire energy in a way to, as I say, beta test things before you take them out into the world, because sometimes it just feels like, oh, that didn't go the way I expected, or I feel just completely overwhelmed with everything, or others are responding with emotional overwhelm rather than actually listening to what I'm saying. And you do want to communicate with people, so it's important to understand that. So I think this is actually saying right now for you, this is the aha moment around this side of things, and starting to look at the past, what happened in the past, to understand how you would make choices that really maximize your ability in the future. Okay, let's get an input from the natural world. So I thought I'd use both a deck that has sort of flowers and plants, and a deck that has animal spirits. So we're just going to get one of each for you. So from the natural world, in terms of flora, we have chamomile, rest and patience, healing happens in its own time. Yeah, there's a big thing here about the more you get into your body in the natural world, the more it will slow you down a bit. I think you just live in these upper realms all the time, and in the mind and the intellect and all that kind of thing. And it's like sometimes you just need to calm down, to be frank. And trust me, I'm not having a go at you. I'm probably far too mercurial myself. I certainly live in my head too much. What about fauna then? What about animal energy around you? Dragonfly, breaking free from illusion. Okay, so this may be about this. It may be that what's sort of happened to you is that you felt, as I say, that things were self-evident because you are brilliant at this. Like, this is amazing. And as I say, it's part of what makes you one in a million. This is what this whole reading's about. Things may not have gone through as you expected because you had the illusion that what was obvious to you would be obvious to everybody else. Dragonfly energy here, I think, helps you understand others a bit better. I think that is a thing. You understand concepts, big waves of history, big spiritual impacts, the consequences of things, all that sort of stuff. But you've kind of shut down because of the amount of information coming in, the heart and the connection to others. I think that Dragonfly will help you with that. And chamomile will calm you down enough to be able to hear Dragonfly's messages. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to finish with a deck called the Soul Mirror Oracle. It has kind of opposites or two energies, like kind of almost a mirror energy. And I wanted to look at it particularly around this, so how you use this double Mercury to bring all this together. And so this is really to show what is an area or an issue that you've got an opportunity to access this information and bring it into balance by understanding almost the opposites that you're needing to balance. So I'm going to put down 3 cards here, and I want you to choose 1 to 3. So whatever one you choose is yours. So pause if you need to, because I'm about to lay them out. So if you chose number 1, we have Priestess, ignorant or wise. If you chose number 2, Transformation, repressed or activated. Well, these kind of make a lot of sense for this reading. And if you chose number 3, Unveiling, clouded or radiant. Okay, all right. I'll get to that, but that one's really interesting. If you chose number 1, this is about you coming into something. You, as I said, you could potentially be a cult leader. You are getting a lot of esoteric knowledge. That's a lot of it, and like lots of downloads, and you've probably had that from many lives as well too. But the thing about the ignorant wise thing is it's both that they talk about the sacred fool. There are people who are so far advanced spiritually that if they try and express it, they appear like a fool. So that could be an issue. Are you being understood? Can people understand you yet? Are you even talking in a language that will work? And this is where getting to the language of the heart and understanding how to communicate in a way that connects is really important, because you do have wisdom to bring, but you may be being seen as ignorant. On the other hand, you also have to make sure that you don't get so divided that you think, oh, well, the wise will follow me and the ignorant won't. Like, it's like you're meant to actually do something that brings people together. Like the two Mercuries. It's not like you kind of get to choose who I talk to and who I don't talk to, in a way that you're meant to actually bring through stuff that helps everyone. So it's like, how do you deal with that? Deal with what you think is ignorance and wisdom, where you think you sit in that, what you think your traditions tell you. Those are the things to think about. If you chose number 2, transformation, this is all about transformation. It's very much pointing to that energy, and the Mercury energy kind of supporting and helping you sort of move forward quickly with the change energy. But it does say repressed or activated, and I think that has to do with within you, it probably activates, but is it getting repressed when it's with other people? So think about that. Again, how do you make the communication that you get also communicate with other people so they transform as well? And if you chose number 3, unveiling, clouded or radiant, I think it's like this energy, if you're only really sitting over here and you're not activating this side of things, then it does seem clouded. People don't understand it. They probably get a sense that you know things or understand things that they don't, but it's still not clear to people. Radiant is when you can actually bring it through in a beautiful way, and that's the sun turning around. That's the Venus connecting to the sun. If you know your chart, have a look at the connection between Venus and the sun, because that may tell you something, and what houses they are in may tell you where you could particularly make that connection in the areas of life. Beyond that, I think you're amazing energy, amazingly fast, ahead of your time, but it's like, how do you kind of just slow down a little bit, ground it into your body and connect it to your heart so that people actually can benefit from what you see. So I hope that resonates. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 2, to your reading. So you came to the reading with double Saturn as the kind of either triggering energy or balancing energy between the two pillars that create this type of spiritual skill, nature, etc., and this part of your spiritual skill and nature, that in combination with this is a bit of a triggering or balancing thing, makes you 1 in a million or 1 in a billion. And it's interesting, when I look at this, I feel like you are meant to create a system, a power structure, a legacy. Like, you aren't meant to just kind of like spiritually develop just for yourself, that you are meant to leave something behind. Whether this is that at its best, when you really use all of this, you create a tradition, a system. So, you could be like Helena Blavatsky or Aleister Crowley or Eliphas Levi or in other sort of things, Buddha or something like that. Like there's a thing here about something that lasts the ages, and communicating that. That's part of your life path. It's like, it's not so, and I think, I know I have a deck called Saints and Mystics, and sometimes Florence Scovel Shinn comes up, and she wrote a lot about different sort of spiritual traditions. There are others as well within that. Emanuel Swedenborg. I'm just sort of saying different names in case you know them, but that's the energy I'm seeing here. Because you have, your life path is connected to communication. So part of your spiritual gifts, they're very of the mind, they're very of how we would articulate things, learning, communication in general. Sometimes a bit of trickster energy if it's necessary, stirring things up when it's necessary, but in a way that is kind of lighter and fun and ideas oriented, rather than kind of evolutionary or revolutionary that you would get, say, with Uranus or Pluto or something like that. So that's one side of it. You are a born communicator, and that's part of your life path, and you'll develop more and more into it because the sun is there, and that's what the sun does. We develop more and more into our sun energy. The other side for you is Mercury again. So the communication, very, very strong, but it's with Saturn, and it's very interesting that we've got Saturn there. And it's interesting because, you would have seen in the beginning that there was one that had double Mercury, and without giving away too much, in case you do want to go and watch that one as well, there were 3 Mercuries that turned up in that. So 3 out of 6, and now we've got 3 Saturns. So that means Saturn, you're a very Saturnian person. I'll be interested to see whether, say, the Empress comes up with tarot, because one of the things about Saturn is that is the planet that rules Binah in the Kabbalah, and that is the divine feminine. So there could be an aspect about that connected to this, connecting. So some of you could have a very strong connection to divine feminine figures, particularly sort of from the upper realms. So things like Sophia, like the communication of information from Sophia and that kind of thing. So that's possible. But whatever it is that it's not just that you're born to communicate, but you are born to communicate a system or a set of learning or something like that. And like we've got Saturn and Saturn there. So this is about legacy. This is about systems. This is about the structure of things. For some of you, you have a direct communication connection to understand like the structure of the universe or the structure of consciousness or something like that. And you're born to do that. You're born to do it. But what you are being asked to do, I think, by this is create something like create a system, write a book, start a program to teach people, whatever it might be. And for some of you, you may manifest this very much in the material world. Saturn things are very Capricornian in a lot of ways. They're very material. So for some of you, it may be taking inspiration that is spiritual and your spiritual gifts and putting them in very Saturnian places like government, politics, big organizations, academia, science maybe even. You might be one of those very interesting people that marries a very strong spiritual inspiration with a scientific rigor. So there's something in that. And like, it's interesting with Saturn and Saturn there's going to be both challenges and helps in activating what makes you one in a million here. The help of Saturn is that it does give structure, it gives grounding, it gives things over time, it allows them to be developed, and it means that what you bring out lasts the test of time. That was why I was kind of saying some of those people, because their works are still looked upon today as very groundbreaking spiritually and so forth. So there's something like that. And that's when it's working at its best. When it could work at its worst is where it becomes dogma, to be honest. So I think because of the nature of the people who come to these readings and because of the nature of this reading, I think it mostly would work in the creating the legacy and so forth. But another profile that could be similar to this, I'm thinking of in history, could be someone like Sir Thomas More from the time of Henry VIII. I'm always very interested in that time in history. And he was very dogmatic about his beliefs to the point that he effectively martyred himself for them. Now, I'm not saying he was right or wrong, but there was a whole energy operating with the Reformation there to do things like put the Bible into English so that people, everyday people could actually read it and it didn't have to be mediated so much through the ruling class. So at its worst, there could be a dogma that comes out of this, or you could have found yourself or been born into a dogma. It may well be that for some of you, you were born into some sort of very strict religious or spiritual environment, and part of this was to find your own message and then create something new, like to break free of that. But there is that risk that with this degree of if you are getting a direct inspiration, I'm saying that's what your life path is, and you're meant to create a system, there is a possibility, there is always a risk that you need to be aware of, that you could become dogmatic with it. So it's how do you retain the communication, the flexibility, but still create something that lasts? I think that's what this is talking about. Now, we're going to look at each of these one by one with tarot, and then we're going to look at the kind of connecting energy. One of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to read the tarot traditionally, but I'm also going to be looking at if we have signs in the, cards in the suits, it's going to tell me a little bit about what you either express or repress around types of spiritual gifts. And when there's major arcana, what kind of external events are caught up in this and in you manifesting what makes you one in a million? So we're going to be looking at both those things. So firstly, look at Sun and Mercury, the born communicator. Born communicator. The Lovers. Queen of Wands reversed. Ace of Wands, Queen of Pentacles, Nine of Wands reversed, okay, this is telling me something right from the start. It's interesting, the colouring for some Mercury there, because it looks very wand-like to me. So what this is saying to me, firstly, just looking at the suits, and the major arcana card, this is all around relationship, making the right relationships, connecting to the right people. All of this is very key to what you do with this. Making connections with people, helping people around relationships. So that's one of the things that triggers this, particularly the communication, maybe the entry point to what you develop as a system. You could be someone who develops a spiritual system that really helps you with relationships, for instance, but it's very much with the people. It's not something done in isolation. What I'm seeing here is that you have very, very well developed, and you are aware of it, what I would call kinesthetic spiritual gifts. So you're very grounded. That doesn't surprise me with all this Saturn. Like, you are so grounded that people would see you as probably one of the most practical people they know. In fact, many of them may not realize how spiritual you are because you are so practical. Very grounded, very committed, and again, commitment. Once you know what your message is, you'll stay committed to it. Of course, that does have the risk of becoming dogmatic, but at the moment it seems to be operating in a positive way. So you would pick up a lot of information that you then communicate from what your body tells you, or physical things tell you, what the material world tells you in one form or another. So that's very, very well advanced. And with Mercury, with the Sun, I think air energy is advanced. So we're not seeing it there. We're not seeing swords cards, but it may be because that's very natural. But I think for a lot of you, you will feel, it has to feel like your gut has to agree with something for you to move forward and commit to it. But you are also very creative. And it's interesting here because it's like you're very developed with that, but you don't realize. Because I say, it's like you're more material, you're more grounded. So like the inspiration that's coming through that's creative, you almost naturally try and ground that energy and put it into some sort of material thing. Because you almost feel like I'm just a beginner at something creative, but you're actually not. And the ace energy here that may make you feel like a beginner is that it may be coming through in a very creative, inspirational sort of way, and a kind of around passion and ambition in some way. And you may be misinterpreting it a bit, Pile 1. You may be thinking, like that's just an idea, or that's just a dream. I've just got to be sensible. I've just got to do the sensible thing. So you may be actually repressing some of this communication, creativity, particularly since there's something about you. I think for most of you, you may be in quite responsible jobs or something like that. And you feel very responsible around material things. So, and like what you're getting coming through here, the sort of new ideas and new ambition, you feel might like kind of upset the apple cart, or you might not be able to ground it and bring it through because you haven't recognized this ability in yourself. So this is interesting. You actually are very creative, and that's a way that you could do things. And it's kind of also how you do this, because you're meant to create a system of some sort or a set of learning. But I think that for many of you, you've been very focused on being responsible, doing your work, doing all that kind of thing. So it's sort of like, but you might have the yearning to create something or do something different, but you're not activating it yet. So it's interesting. What I'm sort of seeing so far with these readings, and I don't know whether it'll be the same with the third one, but it's like this is very dominant. But for you, actually, this is really dominant. It's more the middle point's really dominant for you at the moment. But it's like, how do you activate both of these, really? Because you're very, very, as I say, grounded, which is great, but you're also creative, and you're not saying that. So, and that's a special source. That's why you're 1 in a million. Lots of people can be very grounded, follow systems and so forth. You can create one. That's what this is trying to say. So let's see what happens when you do start to communicate a system of your own. Like, what if you activated that Mercury Saturn, use your capacity to be grounded and to have something of lasting value, and potentially use this to monetize. You could actually do very well out of your spiritual system, I would say. What does that tell us, Mercury and Saturn together? 10 of Pentacles reversed, 5 of Pentacles reversed, Justice, 4 of Wands, 2 of Swords reversed, High Priestess. Okay, one of the things about this for you is, as I say, and the Lovers was a really good indication of this, there's a lot in what you want in terms of security, stability, commitment that has to do with relationships. So I think that one of the issues here is I do think many of you may have almost chosen to be born into a family that have very different views, but you want to maintain the relationships with the family and so forth, but you also want to be able to create something that works for you. And like the big challenge is to liberate the Mercury energy so that the Saturn works for you and so you can follow a life path rather than following this sort of dogged thing. Because what I'm seeing here is that there's a great potential here to do something, but it's almost like you fear if you started to do your own system, would it actually hold together? Would you still have your people? So there's really something here where you're worried about upsetting a group of people. And that's here. Like you do have the creativity, but you're not sure what to do with it. Very spiritual. You know you're very spiritual. You know that's the case. And you know that there's almost like a balance that you're meant to bring. But I think at the moment, this is dominating. Like some sort of like, it's got to be practical. It's got to be reasonable. And look, there could be very good reasons for that. You might, at the moment economically need to do that and only focus on these things. But as I say, you are meant to communicate something new. So try and look at everything that you're dealing with, including this struggle, as part of what you could communicate and help others with, because you are uniquely placed, this is what this is saying, to bring in a new kind of way of articulating a spiritual system, some sort of legacy. And I do think it would actually make you money if that's something that you want to do. So let's see the Saturn and Saturn together. How are they working well? How might they be blocking you? King of Pentacles, Strength, the Magician reversed, the Devil. Wow. A lot of this is in the material world. I think I should have said actually with Justice there and the High Priestess, other spiritual people would help with this, being around other spiritual people and looking at spiritual issues will help, like looking at different spiritual traditions and so forth. So that you can recognize what's true to you and what isn't. And Justice, having a sort of sense of what is fair and balanced, like that's got something to do with this as well. Now, when we have the King of Pentacles, Strength, the Magician and the Devil, there's a lot saying here that Saturn and Saturn is the material world, the external world. It's the beliefs, the legacies that are already in place and so forth. How do you free yourself from false stuff? So there's something where part of what you're meant to create and articulate is something that is a better legacy, is not false, is not calcified in some way. And that is your strength. It's saying like, do that, like take the same strength here, which is to understand the structures, the nature of the universe, whatever it is, to create a new way of communicating. This is something you are uniquely able to do because you can make it practical and you can ground it. And if any of you chose to do it as a business, you would do very, very well. But it's about the Justice energy. It's about liberating people from false belief is how you get towards a legacy that is more true. So your communication skills and your life path are dedicated to justice and finding truth in systems and creating something better. That's what your kind of spiritual genius is. So let's have a look at a couple of kind of broader spiritual gifts for each side of this. So around the Sun and Mercury, just that your life path is about communication. What spiritual gift energies work for you there? Fire, spontaneity, creativity. Yeah, you are much more creative than you think you are. And have ambition. You're allowed to have ambition. Even if you're breaking from an old tradition where you were born into some really privileged family and you could have just sort of like coasted. You are here to break through that and come up with something better. So have ambition because you're meant to communicate your life path. And we have shooting star, confirmation. Look for the stars astrologically. Things will confirm for you. But I think it's also, this is just meant to be a confirmation that this is who you are, because I feel like you're like this incredibly creative and communicative person sort of caught in a very traditional sort of system, and you're meant to kind of break through that. What about Mercury and Saturn? So actually using that Mercury to create the new system, the new way of doing things. I Ching, change. So yeah, this is about something has to change, and you can see where things change. And the consequences of change. One of the things about the I Ching is that it does tell you the consequences. It doesn't pull any punches. And that's one of the other things for like having double Saturn in the middle there and then Saturn with Mercury. You're serious. You're very serious in what you are going to come across with, but that's what's necessary for this. You would have gravitas. This would actually give you quite a lot of charisma. So you would probably have like kind of a spiritual level charisma and gravitas. It's a very, very profound sort of combination. And this is like being able to sort of see the consequences and the right. I mean, the I Ching is all about right action. So I think it is about moving past calcified systems to one that is more aligned. And Wheel of Fortune, knowing timing. You have a good sense, particularly with Mercury. Mercury knows the timing, when change is occurring. You have a good instinct for when change is necessary and how to communicate it. So again, that's important if you're creating some form of tradition. Okay, so let's have a look on a very practical day-to-day level. Some areas in life coming up where you will either be challenged or leverage these energies and this spiritual uniqueness. New beginning. Yeah, this is like you can't stay in the past. You can't stay stuck. Like it's like Kronos had to give away to a new Kronos. Kronos had to give way to Zeus. Big news. Okay. Yeah, it might cause a bit of a flurry when you do this. This is one of the things that's sort of like made you worry about, like, you know, you're going to upset the apple cart, but you might need to do that. Or big news, something that's happening in the world that makes you go, I've got to do something now. That could also trigger you in some way. Thought and strategy, well, you're all over that with combination of Mercury and Saturn actually are very good for thought and strategy. It slows you down enough to be deliberative and understand the kind of consequences of things, but it gives you the inspiration. So there's something around having thought and strategy. And avoid or keep to yourself. Okay, so this is maybe part of the strategy is not to tell other people about this until it's better developed. So I feel like you're starting something new or doing something new, but I don't think that's what you're going to be telling people for the moment. I think you're going to keep it to yourself, but I think something's going to trigger it. Big news within a group that you're in, big news socially or politically, something like that. It's going to trigger all this. You're going to go, aha, now I actually know the scaffolding on which I want to create my system. That's what this seems to be saying. Okay, let's see how nature operates. So we're going to have flora and fauna. So firstly, a message from flora to you around using your spiritual uniqueness. Dandelion, resilience and wishes granted. Trust in new beginnings. Trust in new beginnings. Know that you can do this. You're born to create something new. So trust that. And what about fauna? What about an animal to guide you? Wow, this one came up for the other one. Dragonfly, breaking free from illusion. And I think for you, there's an illusion of a system that has kind of like outdone its purpose or maybe no longer lives up to its purpose, has become dogmatic or whatever. Getting to the clarity. The Mercury will really help you with that, the clarity about what this needs to be. And Mercury and Saturn together and they're not at all illusory. It's like it's deadly serious, all of this for you, like, and it will be well thought out. So I think Dragonfly helps you with that, because in the spiritual realm there is a lot that is a little bit illusory and can be delusion sometimes. So I think your groundedness is really part of your strength here. Okay, so to finish off, I'm going to just ask you to choose a number between 1 and 3, because I'm going to use the Soul Mirror Oracle, which shows kind of two opposites usually of a type of energy. And so I'm really particularly looking at how the Saturn works together here, but bearing in mind what this seems to be saying about what makes you unique. So it shows you kind of the challenge and the best outcome for using your gifts at this point. So if you need to pause, because I'm about to deal out. So for number 1, we have alignment. For number 2, we have gratitude. And for number 3, we have transformation. So if you chose number 1, alignment, this is about aligning, I think, an old system with a new system in a way that now has a refreshed look and can move forward. That's what your life path is. So it's not necessarily that you have to throw away everything, but it's about refinement and taking something to the next level. But it is possible that you will deal with dishonesty. You have to make sure you're very honest with yourself about what's going on. You may find that what triggers this is what you feel is social or spiritual or political dishonesty. You want the truth. So this is about that's almost like your guiding star, the truth around this. And I think the Saturn energy really helps you there. But it can be, Saturn and Saturn together. It can be something that is so ingrained that people don't even see it's dishonest anymore. So there might be a breakthrough energy that you need to employ. If you chose number 2, it's asking you to be grateful for the systems that didn't work, I think, so that you can then create one that works better rather than resenting it or something like that. So if you sit in a kind of attitude of ungrateful, you probably won't create something new. It's more like it's just a critique. They say everyone's a critic, but very few are creative. You are meant to be creative. It's also possible that some people that you might be trying to help with this will be ungrateful. You just have to be aware that not everybody is going to be able to follow you into a new system. On the other hand, if you appreciate the opportunity, others will appreciate what you are bringing to the table. And if you chose number 3, this is a very transformative energy, but it's one that starts in the mind and that provides a new security net. It's not kind of a lot of Pluto and Uranus energy. This is probably slow change, but a profound transformation. At its worst, though, Saturn could repress it. The old system could try and repress this. This is also why you have to have very strong, well thought out and well articulated alternatives. And you do have the capacity for that. And that's why you're the person for this. This is why you're 1 in a million on this level. That allows you then to activate the transformation, even if it feels like it's slow. And even if it feels like you have to fully detach from one thing to create something new, it gives you the strength to do that. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3, to your reading. So you came to the reading with Jupiter and Neptune as being the balancing point. So as I said, like expansion, beneficence of the spiritual, the numinous, the liminal, all of those kind of things, psychic powers that expand and grow and can be used for benefit, all of that kind of thing. But also what one has to balance here is making sure one doesn't get carried away and get into the realm of delusion, because Jupiter can sometimes be too much and Neptune can sometimes be diluted. So for you, the balancing aspect of this is how to use your spiritual uniqueness, what makes you 1 in a million, to create an ideal and to create something that's spiritually grows and is sustainable, not sort of something that is wonderful in theory but doesn't work in practice, or just takes you into the realms of spiritual narcissism or something like that. Now, I'm not saying any of you are that, but I'm just saying that we all have that risk. And so when this is there, if you are particularly someone who can trigger a lot of very beneficial, growthful spiritual energy, sometimes you can do too much or you can believe too much, that kind of thing. So it's just something to bear in mind between these two energies. Now, what I found absolutely fascinating in this reading is that in every single one, there has been one planet that has turned up at least 3 times. And for you, it's Jupiter. Now, that definitely tells me that you are here for a very benefic purpose. You mean well. You're very generous. Part of what makes you spiritually unique is you are about abundance and growth and that kind of benefic energy. But as I say, of all of the readings, you're the one that also can take it too far. It's sort of like, how do you balance that out? How do you make that work? And it's interesting because it's partly about your life path and it's partly about your heart. And that is why I think Neptune is coming in here, because apart from the fact that I think Neptune is saying that what is really activating the growth energy in all of the 2 pillars and then the balancing thing is your spiritual ability. So I think this is a highly spiritual group. Like, it's all the people coming to these readings, it is about spirituality, but I think you're very, very spiritually gifted. Quite Piscean, I think. You don't have to be Pisces, but that kind of energy. It's sort of like you contain multitudes, as Walt Whitman would say, spiritually. And that has a lot of potential, but it also can be too much, as I say. So it's an interesting challenge. For you, there are 3 Jupiter out of 6 planets here. So it is all about the expansion energy. And it is activated by what you love, what you care about, and by your life path. But it tells me, in a way, I sort of feel like there's a sequential thing. What I've found in these readings is almost this to this in the balancing. So it tells me that you first access your spirituality through almost an abundance of caring. You are very kind, like far kinder than most people. And you're very much to the heart, and you love beauty, all of that kind of thing, things that are balanced, things that are caring, and very divine feminine oriented as well, I would say. But very, very caring. So like where you come, what you want to expand, what you want to do, you want to kind of almost heal the entire world or love the entire world or find the brotherhood and sisterhood of man or whatever you want to say. That's who you are, and it's genuine for you. It's not just marketing or kind of like, oh, I'll do that and then I'll make it much more about me or about my people or whatever. There's a very expansive, all-inclusive energy to your spirituality. And that's part of what makes you unique. The other thing is that then you want your life path to also be generous. So one of the things about you, you're the sort of person who could go off and be a missionary. You're the sort of person who could go off and, one day become seen as a saint. And I'm not saying you're perfect, but you are so Jupiter-centric that your life path is about making a difference that is positive. And as I say, sometimes that can get too much. And so you have to be clear what you're doing with Neptune there is actually realistic. But if you balance that well and you use your spiritual gifts to work out where the best expansion is, comes from the heart and recognizes your uniqueness as well. Because one of the things for you with Neptune there, as I say, and almost this Piscean feeling, Pisces can almost absorb everything because they're the last of the zodiac signs. So you've started with Aries, you've gone all the way around to Pisces. Right at the end, you've gone through everything. So there is a side of you that's very absorbent, I've got to say. And so you could absorb everything and lose yourself. But for this group, you actually do have a good sense of who you are. But you could be a bit too selfless sometimes. It sort of depends. Or at its worst, and we are going to look at both these things, you may have this beautiful way of presenting, here's a growthful thing, but somewhere in it, it's actually about you. So there was another group with a different setup that could have been a cult leader. This could be for a different reason. Now, I'm not saying you're a cult leader, but all these sort of gifts and what makes one unique can manifest in a number of different ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to use tarot. We're going to look at this energy and then this energy, and then we'll look at how that connects them. And I'm going to read the tarot classically, but I'm really going to focus on what elements come up, so what suits come up for telling me something about what spiritual gifts you have or spiritual approaches or areas of spiritual gift are present, and what ones are you really using and manifesting, and what ones might you be unaware you have or you're kind of repressing at the moment without being aware of it. And where we have major arcana, it's sort of external energy that's really impacting, bringing out your spiritual uniqueness. So that'll be the case for the first two, and not so much for the third one. We're just going to be looking at what this sort of says about Jupiter and Neptune connecting them. So for Venus and Neptune, the big-hearted you, like you're incredibly big-hearted. Knight of Pentacles, the Emperor, Four of Swords reversed, the Tower reversed, the Hanged Man. Wow, a lot of this is external. Four of Wands reversed. Okay. For a start, the fact that we've got the Emperor there and we have Venus, you're very well balanced within divine masculine and divine feminine. But I do think for most of you, a lot of this at the moment at least is showing up in your career or your work. Like with the Knight of Pentacles and the Emperor. The Knight of Pentacles tells me you feel it within your body. Your gut instinct's really good. It has to feel right. Like there's that kind of kinesthetic sort of set of skills, spiritual gifts or whatever. And it's manifest in a material way, I think. And for many of you, you probably already have some sort of position of leadership or power. Otherwise, this will take you to that. So I do think that this gives me a servant leader feeling to it, actually, with the Neptune, with the Venus and the Jupiter, and then we've got the Neptune and Jupiter there. I think this is sort of like leadership from the heart. So some of this for you is about that, leadership from the heart. You are meant to be seen in the world, and it is meant to, you actually do get downloads sort of intellectually, but it's when you're amongst other people. Like you're actually a really big kind of almost group psychic sponge, but you don't realize you're doing it. But it's one of the reasons that you're able to do this. You can really connect and empathize with groups, big public events, all of that kind of thing. Teams, all that kind of thing, but you're not even aware you're doing it, but it is kind of telepathic. You're trying to bring about change, but you're gentle with it. and you bring people along with you with the Tower reverse. So as I say, servant leader, you're not coming in, and this is not Uranian, it's not Plutonian. This is gentle with Jupiter. And therefore you're prepared to sacrifice. And you could be too self-sacrificial with this, I've got to say. So be aware of that. That's a possibility because you come so much from the heart and you're so giving. But otherwise, I think it's that you kind of can slow things down enough and bring new perspectives to things that bring the change. You have a creative instinct, but you're not really accessing it at the moment. So there's a creative side of you, but I feel at the moment like your work or something like that is more kind of material, and you're working on the hearts and minds. But the other thing that triggers this for you is that you don't want disharmony. You know how to bring harmony. Now, sometimes that can slow what you're trying to do. That is a possibility. Because if you're always trying to get harmony, you almost always get compromise. And there's something here, expansion. Jupiter doesn't really want to compromise. It wants to expand. And for you to fully follow your life path and get the symmetry or whatever, you need to kind of have, but it may be hard with Neptune there, to kind of say, here are the boundaries around this. So you're like a psychic sponge. Be aware of that and think about boundaries. That's important for you because so much comes from the heart that you may not think about yourself enough. So then let's have a look at the Sun and Jupiter. That's right, Sun and Jupiter. So the life path that is, as I say, the servant leader, the benefic one, that kind of thing. But where it could get bigger than you expect and hard to handle as well. So the energy around that, Six of Wands reversed, the Moon, wild card, things coming in from the unmanifest or whatever, like the Neptunian thing, Nine of Cups, Five of Cups, Seven of Wands. Now, remember, these two things multiply. So the kind heart and the life path that is towards kindness and beneficence multiplies to make a very particular type of person. When we're looking at the life path, again, you haven't fully recognized the creative side. And in fact, you're not about you. So that's good in a way. That's really good because it's saying you're not going to go off and become a cult leader. This isn't all about you. In fact, that's the thing. You're so the huge altruistic sort of energy, but it is saying be aware. You do need to kind of know your own creativity and your own thing. That needs to be brought up because there's a kind of underlying message trying to come to you with the wild card reversed from the liminal space, and it's not necessarily coming up until you recognize that this should also be something for you and that you should be recognized in some way. You need to recognize it, but that this is your life path and you have these unique abilities, but you also need to recognize something for yourself. What is your wish? It's saying to you, it's not just about the heart for everybody else. What is your wish? Because you don't want to get to some point with this where you feel disappointed and you lose courage with the Seven of Wands reverse because you haven't worked out how to own it without it running away with itself or without it becoming something that you wouldn't have actually wanted. So there's something about you uniquely. You come from a very pure place, and it's a bit difficult because you're in a material world that isn't necessarily always pure. So it's really important for you to learn how to have boundaries and differentiate out and work out what you see this as and what it means to you, because otherwise it could expand in ways and grow in ways that you don't expect. So let's have a look at that with Jupiter and Neptune. Empress. Oops. The Star reversed. Oh, yeah. Okay. Seven of Pentacles. Eight of Pentacles reversed. Okay. So, look. Why I went, with the Star reversed. This is the thing. It's like, on one level, it is how you are unique here. You genuinely are selfless. Like you genuinely have come in a way in this life for other people. It's not just a kind of virtue signaling thing. It's genuine. And you do want to bring growth. And as I say, very good divine, feminine, masculine sort of balance here. It may even be pointing to the fact that a kind of very kind, expansive, like spiritual connection, like a divine connection or something between you and a partner may be something that really makes this work so that you don't lose yourself in this, because this is the risk, that you lose yourself, that your life path, the sun energy here, isn't fully activated because it's so drawn into being all things to everybody else and not having the boundaries. It's saying slow growth is fine. What you're doing is fine. Expansion will be less likely to be illusory if it's slow. And it's saying you've mastered this. So you can trust that you can do it. But it's almost like you want to be selfless about it and people almost not to notice. But it actually will work better if people do notice. Because I think it's important for them to see this is a genuine person coming from a genuine place of growth and wanting to bring abundance and so forth to others. That's what you're here for. You're not really here for everything else. But for some reason, you're in a very material world and some may not even recognize what's going on, but it's there. And as I say, the best analogy I can use is the servant leader type. And they're rare. There's a lot of people who claim to be that, but they aren't. But you genuinely would be. Okay, so let's have a look at some spiritual gifts that connect with each of these. So with the Venus and Jupiter, well, spiritual gifts can help you really manifest the promise of that really kind heart that you have. Spells, alchemy. Oh, alchemy, that's interesting. The divine inner marriage. You may be you're alchemical in a marriage between the sun and the moon, between the divine masculine and feminine, all that kind of thing is very much in play. You know how to bring balance. You know what the right recipe is. You literally can do a kind of spell because you're so connected to the liminal. You would be able to manifest actually, but as I say, you're quite selfless. And then also we have organ mastery. Yeah, so you've mastered the capacity to read the future, to see where expansion can be, to provide leadership and guidance to others. And it comes from a really nice balanced place. What about Sun and Jupiter? So your life path, and like also your life path. Thinking about how it expands as well as for everybody else and how you become more seen, because I think you're meant to be seen with this. We have shooting star confirmation. Yeah, it's confirming like you're meant to be a star. Don't hide yourself away because you are. Pole 3. And we are bored. Caution. Okay, yeah, because you have caution, you will have the right caution, okay? It's not, you don't have to worry. You may be worried about this. You may be really very aware that it's possible to, once you make something like this kind of spiritual alchemy, which is what you have, and growth and beneficial energy or whatever, it can get out of hand and it can become diluted. I think you're really aware of that, and that's one of the reasons if you pull away from it, I think you feel if you pull away from it personally, then it's less likely to happen. But the thing is, this is the other pillar. Like you need to be in it because it's part of what makes this happen. Part of the alchemy is you and your life path. But like know that you have the right caution. You know, you're not going to get big-headed about it and decide that you should run a cult. It's not going to happen, okay? So let's see some very everyday energies where this is operating at the moment, pole 3. Thought and strategy. So this is saying like there's something around you at the moment where you could actually have a strategy. If you're worried about this and how to do this, you know, it's a strategic thing. You can work that out. Consequences of bad choices, yeah, because you're worried about that. So have a strategy. like you're coming from your heart, you're very naturally abundant, you're very naturally able to manifest in many ways. But like if you worry about the bad choices or whatever, like really up your kind of thinking about it rather than just the feeling. Avoid or keep to yourself. There may be some things that you do think you have to be cautious about. There may also be things where you think, okay, I'm going to do this, my strategy, but I don't talk to others about it. And comfort zone. Be aware of when you kind of like go into your comfort zone, which is kind of making it all about everybody else. See, I think this is kind of like, think about like, you know, like the impact of not talking to people about any of this. And you may well be in an environment where, as I say, if it's, oh, this is happening in the workplace, probably sitting down in some team meeting and saying, oh, I use alchemy and spirituality, and it would probably not go down that well. So it may depend upon the environment that you're in. But equally, don't use that as an excuse to go into your comfort zone. There is a strategy to get the caution operating in a way that works for you. Some of you might have seen someone who appeared to be a bit like you, but actually it was all about ego and you don't want to be that, I'm getting. So remember that because you can have a strategy that is better. But there is a comfort zone for you of pulling back and making it not about you. But this is what the two of these things together are what exponentially builds what's unique about you. So don't lose that, pole 3. Okay, let's see how flora and fauna can help you. So we're going to start with a plant energy as advice. Time, courage and action. The time for hesitation is over. Yeah, so like this is like, there is a kind of courage necessary here. When it's all very selfless and all very much about everybody else, it's almost like you don't have as much skin in the game. Like you care, you really care a lot, but like it's not going to be as courageous a move. But to really access what makes you 1 in a million, you need to also put yourself front and center in this in some way. So what's an animal guide for you, fauna guide for you? Ladybug, time of luck. So this is a good time. And you have a good sense of that with that mastery of augury. You will have a good sense of when it's lucky and useful. And that goes with Jupiter as well too. Jupiter is the planet of luck. You are probably very lucky. And it may well be that people think, oh, you're just lucky. So you might be worried about resentment, but it's not. It's the kind of flow of your heart and your spiritual gifts. But you will know good timing. You will know when to move forward, when to do things. Okay, so to finish off, I'm just going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 3. I'm going to use a deck that has kind of opposite energies within one's soul so that we can see particularly how this works, like where Jupiter works really well to bring in spiritual knowledge and gifts, and also when it can sometimes do too much and make it confused or illusory or whatever. So just look at kind of an energy that you might be balancing to really, really sort of sharpen the ability of your 1 in a million spiritual profile. So if you don't know a number yet, pause because I'm about to lay them down. So number 1 is comfort. Okay, that's interesting. Number 2 is communication. And number 3 is cycle. Okay. So if you chose number 1, you bring a lot of comfort to people. And when they feel lost, you can make them feel found, all of that kind of thing. It's like natural to you with all that Jupiter. There's kind energy. But I think there is a thing about, are you lost in all this? Do you need to be found more? And how would that happen? So it's like, if you just do what is comfortable, you risk the fact that your life path is lost in this. So one part of what really makes you unique and turbocharges this is not really activated. So it's asking you to find yourself. If you chose number 2, communication is really important in this. And it's interesting, it just made me realize this is the only one that didn't have Mercury strongly in it in one form or another. So I think part of this is that you don't talk about your spirituality a lot, or only to a certain number of people. As I say, I think most of you might be in environments where you can't really talk about it. But there may be other ways to communicate this energy. So you don't want to feel stifled. And if you do feel stifled, then that might be stifling what you could really do. Where can you be more communicative? How can you communicate it in a different way, even if it isn't directly spiritually? And how can you communicate your side of it? And if you chose number 3, cycle, we've got regressed and evolved. So that really sums up the potential of this, to be honest, both for you and for those you're around. So you mean well for people. But what this is saying is that unless you also do stuff for yourself, it's a bit like that maxim, and I use it sometimes, that if you're in an airplane and the oxygen goes, they tell you have to put your own mask on first before you help other people. Don't forget yourself in this, because it's possible that it then could regress your own spiritual development, and you want to evolve. We're all evolving, and like there is more that you can do for yourself and your life path. Equally, if you are so focused on others that it's never about you, you could inadvertently make people dependent on you. So instead of like showing an example for how to evolve that they can follow, they almost regress into relying on you. So it's asking you to have a think about that as well. So I hope that resonated for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.